like to thank, don't like to single out people, but I'd like to thank and acknowledge a lot of effort for getting this meeting organized goes to Tamara, our hip health coordinator, as well as Joel. And I think the two of them have done incredible amount of work. And Joel is our managing director of research. That uh, all of what you're seeing here is we could have paid $20,000 for AV, or they've actually made the technology work, and it's unbelievable. So thank you so much for doing that. We are really pleased that we're doing the second annual network meeting. And this network, as you all know, the intent of this network is to really bring the hip health experts and people that care about hip health, or people that are impacted, are dealing with the burden of hip disease together. So this is not just a network for practitioners, it's a network for advocates, the patient advocates, and patients and families, and those of us that are trying to improve hip health. So, and truly, the intent of this is global. And today's what we're going to be doing is really talk about where we're at, what progress have we made, where we need to go. And the most important thing is to come with a way forward for next year. There's several people that are involved in bringing it this far, and they will be sharing their work that they're doing with different pillars. So with that, I'll pass it back to Joel for the rest of the meeting and to keep moving things forward. Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, Kishore. So, welcome everyone, wherever you may be in the world, whatever time it may be. We're glad to have everybody join the Hip Hope Network, which is a global community, and we like to acknowledge the place where we operate from. So the Hip Hope Network operates in part on the current unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Today, we're presenting to you from the current and ancestral territories of the Cherokee East, Yuchi, and Shawanasi. I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong. Shawanawaki and Shawnee nations. We invite all to reflect on the current traditional and ancestral territories, land, and waters, which allow us to live, work, and play. And speak clear if that helps, and for those on Zoom can hear okay. So a little bit about the Hip Hope Network. I'll get us started here and then hand it off for the different sections. We're going to do an update today across the board for what we've been up to, as well as some of the special activities that we've got planned. But just stepping back, the Hip Hope Network, so you can hear okay, is a global community that includes diversity, not only in terms of geography, but also in terms of what people do and what people, their roles in hip health, but it's inclusive. So we aim to include everybody. So it aims to bring together experts to advance research in pediatric orthopedics, share knowledge, and galvanize professional collaborations globally. Sorry, hang on a second. We'll just get the sound. Okay, so maybe we can I get another microphone attached to your computer that we can have one in the room and then one on Zoom that way? You have the others now. Okay, so, okay. Okay. Hang on. Making things work here. So, can we just double check the sound okay? Lovely. All right, we'll continue this way, and I'm not sure if the camera followed me. Hello. Yeah, we're doing our best to make the most with what we've got here, and so I'm glad that if everybody can hear online and if everybody can hear in the room, we definitely aim to be, as connected as we can, and so these hybrid events are something we're getting better and better at, and it's something we'll talk more about as we go through the discussion today. But let me get back to where we were. So Hip Hop Network, what we do. Our mission, improve hip health, mobility, and the quality of care for children with hip conditions worldwide. And our vision is an envisioned future with a solution for every hip challenge. So lofty goals, and I mean, that was by design. We spent a lot of time and got some great input to come up with this goal, and it's a shared mission across the world with all of our collaborators and colleagues. So we're excited to continue. Now this is our second plenary session with the full community, and we're really gaining momentum. So excited to bring some updates and talk about new things today. Another bit of context is our strategic framework. So we've got 4 main areas that we focus on in terms of the kinds of things that we're doing and the values that we bring to our membership. One is community, where we'll have updates from each of these in the course of the meeting today, and research and professional development and growth and outreach. And of course, those are supported by foundational items, but again, really, these are all aiming toward our solution for every hip challenge. And it's to be, a leading hip health network and resource platform in the world. So we aim to grow quite a bit. Right now, we're launching a bunch of things that we had envisioned in the past, and we're really at a stage of starting to create these connections and the value points for members. It includes a lot of great help and a lot of people who are volunteering their time and expertise and energy. Of course, there's the founders who came up with the concept years ago and have helped drive it to what it is today, Dr. Kishore Mulpuri and Dr. Emily Schaefer from Vancouver. And there's a team of us also in Vancouver who help support all the different things that it takes to get the infrastructure and the connectivity and the good energy going from our pillar leadership team and for all the members who are already a part of our group. So the pillar leaders include, and I'll actually, maybe we'll introduce these as we get into each of the pillar sections, because a number of these folks will get a chance to speak at that time, and we'll introduce them then. But not only is there the pillar leadership team, but we're drawing energy and input from so many people, and we're really appreciative of that, because this is a member-driven organization. And so we appreciate all that support and the continuing efforts and input that continue, and we're going to be soliciting for today is more input and action in terms of building out the different pieces that we envision. So our agenda for today. We've done a welcome and overview. We'll do network updates next for each of those 4 pillars. And then we have a discussion panel set up. We'll have 4 different leaders from around the world to speak to developing global networks in pediatric orthopedics. So Kishore will lead the discussion and introduce those 4 members, or those 4 people who are going to share their perspectives and wisdom that is very relevant to the Hip Hop Network in terms of growing global community and in ways that we aspire to as well. And we'll look forward, things that we're aiming to do next, and invite some follow-up activities from our members. And of course, we'll aim to capture this event with some pictures and screenshots. And for those of us in the room, there's refreshments and time for us to stay and connect afterward. So we'll get started with our first pillar, which is research, and Dr. Emily Schaefer will come up and speak to that.
All right, thanks, Joel, for getting us started. And yes, welcome everybody joining from around the world. It's my pleasure to give an update on the research pillar on behalf of myself and my wonderful pillar co-lead, Dr. Woody Sankar. And so our overarching goals with the research pillar in Hip Hope are really to connect research leaders and researchers globally and open up and foster new collaborations, new studies, new ideas, and come together to solve the pressing hip problems. We want to enable researchers, new researchers, existing researchers with tools, and grow new research registries that allow us to finally answer some long-standing questions in the field. It didn't. And so one of the ways that we're looking to do that is by developing a rare hip conditions registry, or RHCR, as part of our HIPPY Global Registry program. And so what this is aimed at is better understanding both the natural history and optimal treatments, as well as outcomes for a number of rare or more rare pediatric hip conditions. And that's definitely the rare aspect really depends where you are in the world for some of these conditions for sure. But we have 29 hip conditions included so far, ranging from bone cysts involving the hip, femoroacetabular impingement, to the hip in sickle cell disease, the hip in spinal muscular atrophy. We are, if you guys are interested in connecting with us on this, please do scan this QR code and go to the investigator interest form. We are actively seeking champions for different hip conditions that are involved in this registry. If you're interested in contributing patients or being sort of a leader of one of the conditions, we're happy to hear from you. And also, if we have a list in this investigator form of the conditions that are there. If you see a condition or you do not see a condition you think should be included, please do reach out to us because we are open to adding more conditions as needed too. And so we have written up a protocol and we plan to actually submit for ethics at our institution shortly, launching with 3 of the conditions. So we plan to start with the hip in SMA, the hip in Rett syndrome, and the hip in trisomy 21 is our 3 that we are starting with. And we'd like to, coming soon, or tomorrow, has it launched or not quite yet, the research toolkit? Coming soon, okay. Coming soon, we have our inaugural version of the Hip Hope Network Research Toolkit. So Woody and I have been building tools that we think will be helpful to new and established researchers alike, that we hope to provide sort of some tips and tricks and sort of pathways to success in research, starting with sort of a general overview of conducting clinical orthopedic research. There's presentations on writing effective manuscripts, getting your research published, writing up effective research grants and compelling research grants, as well as tips and tricks on putting together scientific posters and a number of other pieces. Additionally, we have already just recently disseminated our first research newsletter with the goal of engaging researchers with resource materials and a number of other communications. We had a spotlight that Woody wrote on sort of tips and tricks for follow-up in research studies, as well as highlighting some of the amazing and incredible research that's going on in some of our affiliated affiliated research groups like IPSG and Anchor and CHOP. And so with that, we have a Slido or poll question for our research pillar for engaging with the audience and engaging with future collaborators, hopefully. And we want to know what you would like to see in future editions of the research toolkit as we develop out more content. What is some pressing resources or pressing materials you think would really help guide the research process, either for you or for trainees or for colleagues that are new to research? And so if you can go to Slido and enter in the hashtag HHN following this QR code here and answer the poll question. Great. Want me to stop sharing slides? Yeah. Yeah, so we have about 8 to 10 things in the toolkit right now. So we have an overview manual on conducting clinical orthopedic research in general. We have a general document on sort of tips and tricks for writing manuscripts and sort of ways to help facilitate that process. We have a presentation on getting your research published, so going through the manuscript write-up process and going through the journal submission process. We have a presentation on developing a compelling research grant and a presentation on creating an effective scientific poster for a scientific meeting. And so we'll be working on not only honing that content as their presentations, and hopefully we will add a component where there's actually a recording to go with the presentation, as well as then developing other materials. Thanks, Solio. Great, so yes. Great, so research collaboration opportunities, key in your research insights, share research ideas, chat GPT and the pediatric hip. That's definitely, chat GPT is taken over. We're gonna have to add that in for sure. Thank you for some great ideas. Knowledge translation and publication. Oh, that triggered my memory. I forgot we do have a knowledge translation presentation in there, but there's definitely a lot of material that could be developed in that side of things too. And barriers to publication. Statistical analysis, those are all fantastic ideas. So thank you so much for your active contributions. I think that's the research pillar updates, but I would also just like to plug, we would love to hear from, if you're allied health and are interested in getting involved in research as well, please do reach out, because we need your perspective and your energy and involved in the research too. So, thanks so much for listening. Yes.
Thanks, Emily. Right here. So next, professional development, Kishore is going to ask to speak on behalf of this one for today. Is that here? This one? All right. Thanks, Kishore.
Yeah, sorry. I know Ben and Pablo couldn't join, so thank you again. I mean, what you're seeing today is an incredible amount of work that has been going on throughout the year, and all of these people, these leaders have spent a lot of time, a lot of their volunteer time to get it up to where it is today. And we need all of your help to move it forward. So with professional development, what are we going to do? So I think what one of the things that we want is we recently had a webinar, and those of you that are on Doc Matter, there is actually a separate page for HIP, and that is actually a forum in which we will do a lot of case discussions, presentations, and webinars. One of the key things that we want to do is develop courses, uh, modules. We'll call them hippie modules, whether it's going to be, yeah, whether it's going to be on DH. Right. So if you are not already a member on Doc Matter, it's pretty simple to join. So please sign up, and you will get HIP specific cases, which through the Hip Hop Network in partnership with them and OP, Orthopediatrics. Um, oh, okay, sorry.
Why don't I, I'll find.
Yeah, thank you. Right. What we really want to do is to have a library of content that anyone can download. And we'll start off with a lot of the presentations that I have on pediatric conditions, including PowerPoints. We'll actually make them available because I do believe that in educational world, especially when we're thinking about catering for the world, personally, I don't believe in IP when it comes down to sharing content. So I think we'll start with that. And the education modules we're planning to develop, we will start with working with Elric Arugis. I think he's on the call. He's the president of Pediatric Orthopedic Society of India, working closely with Sukhdeep Dulai, who is a pediatric orthopedic surgeon from Canada, who's taking a year of sabbatical. And she wants to work with him and Dr. Rujita Mehta, also from Mumbai in India, developing a DDH module to start with to make it specific for India for some education tools, and we'll modify them for any content anywhere in the world. So that's going to be the first module we'll be working is a DDH education module that we can then morph into whether it's going to be a half-day course aimed at primary care providers, or it's going to be a full-day course looking at specialists, or if there's a course that we're looking at working with our therapists. So that's going to happen in the next 12 months. So look out for that. We welcome you to join. If you already have some tools that you can share, rather than reduplicating it, we would reach out. And I know, for example, Simon Kelly has got a great content on public harness application, its use, and there are several people that have already developed other education tools as it relates to DDH. So that's an example of what we want to do and move forward. This webinar is, I think, live now, and it's there on Doc Matter. So do go and look at it. It'll give you a brief update about what we're doing till now.
So here's the next poll question. Um, what professional development webinars would you like to see hosted by Hip Hop Network? Of course, or events, other professional development ideas. I mean, webinars is going to be a key one, and it's, we can do a lot of reach and scale with that. But we're open to every idea, so please don't hold back.
like it, how to get involved. The fact that you're here, do reach out to us. It's everybody's volunteer time. We definitely need help and your involvement. And as I said, the 10 people or 12 people that you see are, it's not enough to get this global network going. And next year, we'll be on the sidelines of EPOS now. There'll be an in-person meeting. But our goal is that we understand that not everybody can join, not everybody can travel. We'll make every meeting a virtual option as well. I know it's, as you saw today, it's a challenge with technology sometimes to make it work, but we you guys have our commitment that we will make sure that you don't need to necessarily travel to be connected. We will also have, we're hoping next year, I mean, based on what you think that where the direction you want to go, we may have symposia and free papers with time. So most of our traditional meetings, there's not enough time for us to really go deep into some of the things that we're trying to work on children's hips. So look out for that. And even for that, we will have a virtual option as well, those that cannot travel. Thank you for these comments that you're putting in. Rare hip condition registry, yes, if you follow us on you're a member, the fact that you're here, I'm hoping that you've already signed up as a member, and we will send you the information about the registry once we have it ready to go. We're just working through our process now, and I think our database is being built. And once we have it ready to go, we will let you know.
So this question is, would you be interested in leading the development of an educational module on a topic of your choice? So if you're interested, please indicate so. If you're interested in leading it, if you're interested in participating, no, if you're just wanting to see the results, see what happens, please let us know. We're curious to just test the waters, see what the general consensus is in the room, both the Zoom room and the present room. We'll take that question and run with it, and then reach out a little bit more directly from there about some actual topics and with more direction of building those out. Thanks. Leave it back to Kishore.
Yeah, I think that's professional development. And I'll switch to sharing back again. Thank you, Kishore. There we go. Community next, I'll invite Dr. Salil Basani. Welcome, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Joel. And thank you everyone for joining us. My co-pillar lead is also online, Dr. Alric Arugis. Do you want to say hi real quick, Al?
Hey,
He's having some internet connectivity issues, so I can just go forward with some of these slides.
sure.
the
Great to
community
see all of you
development plan.
guys.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, Al.
Go ahead,
for it.
Salil. No, it's great. Great to see everyone online and present there physically. It's wonderful, really, to see how far we have gotten with the Hip Hop Network. So, any of you interested in contributing to the community pillar, do let us know. We are in the process of filling up the various committees and subcommittees. So, do put in your names and send us across your interests. So, thanks very much. And I'll leave it to Salil to take it forward.
Great, thank you, Al. I think the Zoom crowd probably heard you, but Al was saying that if there are certain communities that you want to be interested in, please reach out to us, let us know so we can assign you appropriately. So the primary purpose of this pillar is to establish the community within the network and then create key connectivity channels. And so some of the ways that we're planning to do that is to establish a mentorship program. So if you're interested in becoming a mentor or having a mentor within one of the sites, either locally within your country or throughout the global network, we ask you to please reach out. The primary purpose of these relationships is to help the mentees figure out how to get involved in the society, as well as create established research programs or get involved in some of the rare HIP registries, as well as case discussions. If you're not comfortable presenting or posting some of your cases on DocMatter and you want more individualized feedback from your mentors, it's a good way to just have a connection with your colleagues throughout the world. So we encourage you to participate in this mentorship program. The second thing I wanted to share with all of you is this organizational structure that we're trying to target. And maybe we could just work through this a little bit to see where you would like to get involved. So the advisory board, our vision was to have some of the senior emeritus professors within our society to be the advisory board for this network. A lot of the administration is happening in Vancouver, so thank you so much to that team that's working on the finance and legal aspects, as well as establishing some of this infrastructure for the communication and technology. So then the actual network itself, we're planning to have a governing council, which will be made up of the pillar leads, as well as representatives throughout the globe. So we'd like to have representatives from each of the continents. And we're also very interested in having a diverse representation from not just MDs, but RNs, PTs, athletic trainers, NPPAs, as well as patient and family advocates. So the whole point of this network is to bring us all together and collaborate on advancing our treatments of numerous HIP conditions. So next we'll have an executive committee that will primarily be in charge of these pillars. We've gone through some of these, including the community as well as professional development and research. You'll hear soon from growth and outreach. So currently we have 2 people assigned to each of these pillars, and we're trying to build out the committees next. And so you can see some of those committees that we're interested in establishing, which would be the Membership and Nominations Committee on how to get involved in the network, help with planning some of these events. So you've seen the Legends event that will be coming up soon, as well as these annual meetings through the Hip Hop Network. And additional advocacy and fundraising efforts, as well as helping with the newsletters and the communication within the network. So we encourage you to please reach out to us. We've had numerous interest lists, and we have kind of started to establish people within some of these committees, and you should be receiving a formal invitation letter from us within the next few weeks to express your interest in continuing to participate, as well as work to push this network forward. So please email us at this info@hiphopnetwork.org to express your interest, and if there's any of these committees that you specifically want to get involved in. Great, any questions? I'd be happy to take. Otherwise, we will go to this poll on Slido. And the question we're asking here is, how do you envision the Hip Hop Network community in the next 5 years and 10 years? So it looks like we have a question from Megan B. She's asking, are they looking only for doctors, or do they want community members that are patients and have these conditions? So that's wonderful. We definitely want patients, we want families, we want everyone involved. So we're not just looking for doctors, and we want to make that very clear to build a collaborative network. Yeah, that's interesting, this focus towards International Pediatric Hip Society. So that is a potential direction that this organization could go in. And I think the primary purpose is to make sure that we're representing populations throughout the world and all parties interested in hip conditions, so not just physicians. Sorry, the questions went away. Oh, there you go. Very good, comprehensive and inclusive, partnering within all of us. How are we going to get AI involved? I'd love to learn more about that. Maybe in diagnosing some of these conditions early, maybe to help establish some ultrasound protocols in some of the developing countries. All right, great. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Salil. Carry on. Our next topic area, which is growth and outreach. I am going to invite Dr. Pranay Budav, who's one of the co-pillar leads for this group.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here in Nashville and to have you all here online as well. Firstly, I want to acknowledge my co-pillar lead, who I got to meet in London last year, Dr. Patricia Marino, who's based in Brazil. And we've got to have some really great conversations about how to make this network more global and not just local or North American based, which is where we find a lot of the large societies are. So our goals really are to raise the Hip Hop Network's profile. And as I said, on a sort of global level, reaching underserved areas like Africa and Asia, and to establish key relationships and fundraising capabilities. So part of that is the events that we host, is part of what we do as part of growth and outreach. And this year we have our Hip Health Day, which is going to be on the 4th of June. And that's on a weekend. And we hope you can all join us for that. Please sign up at the QR code. And this will be our third meeting of the Hip Health Day. And what we do is we want to celebrate not only those who are involved in hip health, but also those involved in research, advocacy, patients that have brought attention to their condition. And you can sign up here, as you can see. Part of the Hip Health Day is actually acknowledging hip legends. So we're at Posner right now, and we had the Hall of Famers. This is essentially the Hall of Famers for hip health. And we'd love you, if you know anyone who you feel is a hip legend, and they don't need to come from a particular background. They can be clinicians, they can be researchers, they can be patient advocates, to nominate them. We're I think it's about 7 per year that we've inducted. So we're doing about 7 per year. They've had a huge amount of acknowledgement, and patients have nominated their own clinicians. We've had researchers part of that. And we're hoping to then do podcasts and sort of let people know from around the world what these guys have really done, and these gentlemen and ladies, what they've done for hip health. Part of growth and outreach is really trying to drive the membership. I've been very fortunate to travel around the world in the last year and go and meet colleagues in Zimbabwe, South Africa, Tanzania, India. So places where we may not typically get many members. So all I can say is if you have the phone number of someone who is involved in pediatric hips, please send them a QR code, which we'll send out, I'm sure, by email. If you can please send out the QR code to them and get them to sign up, it'll be really good, because actually collaboration is the most important part of the Hip Hop Network. And we want to get reach into every nation in the world. There are always people who are managing pediatric hips, but people don't know about them. So please, we will send out the QR code to sign up to our Red Cap survey to become a member. And you'd be very surprised as to, in certain areas of the world, they have rare hip conditions that they probably have huge experience in that we undervalue and we don't do a huge amount with. I think last year I met someone from India who had probably the highest number of avascular necrosis of the hip due to sickle cell. So, that person can drive so much knowledge translation to our other members, and we can all learn from each other. So please sign up for it. So finally, there's our poll question here. If you can all answer it. We've tried really hard to connect with other societies. So a lot of like the Italian Pediatric Orthopedic Society, the European, the British, but are there any other organizational groups? And this could be patient advocate groups. This could be research groups like the IPSG. There's a lot of teams from around the world that we probably aren't linking with right now. So if you can all scan this Slido and just write down and say who you think we should be connecting with. All the major, we're very grateful to Posner for letting us host this during their annual meeting, and next year will be at ePosner. But we're looking for the groups and organizations that are probably less well known about, and that could be a physiotherapy-based program or patient advocate program. So I'll go to the next slide. We need to, yeah. Great. So Pethis Kids Foundation, that's a great suggestion. And actually, one of our hip hop legends last year was the founder of the Pethis Kids Foundation. So that's great. And yeah, we're really keen to link up not only with clinicians, but those who are interested in pediatric hip health, be it physiotherapists, nurse specialists, ANPs, PAs, whoever's really involved. So all of you are here today. We're really grateful for you being here. Mask for Hips, again, a great patient advocacy program, has a strong sort of social media presence. Nancy was another, and Nancy actually visited Vancouver, right? Just after your meeting last year. So, oh, there we go. Great. So all these things, but if anyone's looking or has a suggestion, and our role as growth and outreach is very much trying to grow the hip hop network and make sure that we're penetrating all areas of the world. Please don't hesitate to contact us, and myself and Patricia will do as much as we can to contact. Awesome. Thank you very much. I'll pass it on. I take it that's the last slide.
Thanks, Pranay. And so that was an excellent update on growth and outreach. That was the last of our 4 pillar areas. I'll get us back to our presentation here. And the next part of our event is the discussion. We're actually tracking nice and early. So a couple of our speakers, all of these speakers are going to be joining us online. I'll let Kishore introduce them in a minute here. We're one is already tuned in, and we have a couple. We've lined them up for 15 minutes from now. So perhaps we can get them to join. We'll connect with them and see if we can start this bit a bit earlier. But perhaps it's a good time to take a quick break, or if you wanted to, yeah. So why don't we do that? There's refreshments, and for the folks on Zoom, we'll take a 5-minute break and get our speakers connected and lined up, and we'll restart again just shortly.
I would really appreciate our panel that's going to join us, and I think Nancy is here. And Nancy, can you say hello? So we want to see if the audience here can hear you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Oh, clearly. Thank you, Nancy.
Perfect.
So, Nancy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do, and why are you involved in trying to improve hip health?
Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you for having me. This really is such a privilege, and always happy to join and speak on behalf of hip health conditions around the world. So my name is Nancy Muir. I come to this discussion from multiple vantage points. I am a pediatric physical therapist. I work in motion analysis in the United States. I also currently am finishing up my postgraduate degree, and I've ended up doing my research in shared decision making around hip dysplasia and specifically periacetabular osteotomy surgery, which has just been an incredible experience. I'm getting ready to defend my research next week and hoping to have a publication around this and looking more at development of patient decision aids around hip dysplasia and hip preservation surgeries in the near future. And then I also come to this work as a patient advocate, and I am the director of Miles for Hips, which is a patient-driven initiative that I started a couple of years ago, and I work in collaboration with the International Hip Dysplasia Institute. And really where we come to at Miles for Hips is we really want to try to be a liaison between the patient community. We just feel very strongly about the power and the engagement of patients in healthcare and trying to help make that tangible to patients all over the world and give patients a voice and patients a way to get engaged. We feel very strongly about education and information and allowing patients and families to be able to participate in their healthcare and be fully informed. So that's kind of our background through Miles for Hips. So always happy to have a chance to come and talk about this.
From your perspective, as you know, most of these organizations, quote unquote, are physician driven, like, Posner, for example. I mean, if you're not a physician and you're not a researcher that's an affiliate member, can't really get involved to present and other things. So tell us what do you think this network can do to engage with people like you that are advocating for improving hip health?
When you're saying this network, you mean
Hip Hope Network.
the Hip Hope Network
Yeah.
versus the and what I see we're Miles for Hips, one of our founding concepts or pillars was around the idea of participatory medicine, which I've actually talked to quite a lot of health providers and realized that this concept of participatory medicine really is not fully understood even by many members of the healthcare society and professions. And really by participatory medicine, it's this concept that healthcare can be optimized when you bring together the perspectives of healthcare providers, researchers, advocates, and then patients especially. And where we see Hip Hope Network, we see patients as an incredible asset to healthcare and to healthcare communities. And being able to bring in, I think patients are key stakeholders, patients and families are key stakeholders in medical decision-making, medical care, outcomes. We all talk about patient-centered care. We all talk about patient empowerment, patient engagement, but how do we really do this? And I think just over my years and my experiences, I've really come to understand and respect and recognize the power in patient communities. And I think very underestimated in the world, in the medical world, of just how engaged and knowledgeable patients are and how much that voice can be brought to the surface as really a key stakeholder. So that's where I see this opportunity to build these communities through it, and how important it is to include that patient perspective and those patient voices. And once again, when I say patients, I tend to circulate in a lot of more adult communities for patients who have historically pediatric hip conditions, but certainly we work with a lot of patients, families, everybody from infants through adulthood. But I think really being able to garner that as a huge member of this network.
Thank you, Nancy. I see Regina Wilkin joined us. Regina, welcome.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. I didn't realize you started early, so my apologies for just joining.
Well, she's used to Kishore Mulpuri time, which is about half an hour late.
I am actually very much so. So this is something special.
Regina, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us why are you involved in improving hip health of children? And I know Hippie is one of the biggest supporters right now for this network. And tell us your plans, what you're doing.
Right. So I'm Regina Wilkin. I am the executive director for I'm a Hippie. It's really interesting sort of how we got involved in this whole thing. One of the more common sort of comments we get when we do our advocacy and fundraising is, well, you know, that's really interesting, but hip health, that's not really life-threatening. And it just pushes us that much more to do what we do, because, you know, the thing is, and what we always say, as you all know, is it may not be life-threatening, but it certainly is life-changing. And there isn't enough sort of dialogue and awareness for the importance of hip health, particularly for children's hip health. So that's why I think, well, myself and you know, we're a group of volunteers really are very passionate about I'm a Hippie and the work that Kishore and Emily and their team do at BC Children's Hospital. So what do? We started 6 years ago. We said, you know, we would do a little bit of fundraising to help out, which turned out to be a really, well, it was a lot of fun, but it was, we realized we could make a lot of difference doing that in our community here in Vancouver. And so it sort of evolved from that to I would say we are now a full-on advocacy group. But, you know, having gone from really looking at what we can do locally in our community here in Vancouver, you know, we realize we are all global citizens and we have responsibilities, not just for our local community, but really for, you know, well, globally. And you know, we believe that whatever we do should impact not just our community here, but, you know, everywhere in the world and every child in the world. So, you know, in line with the global view of the Hippie Lab, our thing is as well, you know, every little thing we do, whether it's fundraising, whether it's education, whether it's awareness, we should make a difference, not just here, but globally, and it should touch and impact every child. And we shouldn't stop until our message is heard. It's an important message, and we want to make sure that's heard everywhere in the world.
Great. I see now. Thank you, Regina, for that. And thanks for everything I'm a Hippie is doing really to improve hip health, both locally and globally. I see two of my good friends joined, Ron and Uni. And maybe Ron, will start with you. I want you to introduce yourself. I want you to tell a little bit about the pediatric, spine group and that you're involved with. But also, I want you to reflect on one of the, I guess I wouldn't call it a hesitation. One of the things that people worry about, quote unquote, too much fragmentation, too much subspecialization. But I would humbly say that actually makes our parent societies, like say, for example, at POSNA that we're really affiliated with, better. Like the research that gets presented is much more refined because there's a lot more that's happening at SRS or pediatric spine or else. So Uni, after Ron is done, I know the reason I say is you've been a president of ASCPDM, but you're very, very engaged and involved with COA and POSNA. So especially with having a focus on pediatric hip, is it going to detract from some of the efforts, or what have you viewed? So we'll start with you, Ron.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kishore. It's a pleasure to be here. I wish I could stay one more day in Nashville and be with you in person. Some family obligations to get back home. I'm pleased to be here as a representative and executive board member of the Pediatric Spine Foundation. I've been president of this foundation a couple of years ago at a critical time in its creation. And I'll tell you a bit of a story of kind of fragmentation of pediatric scoliosis over the last 20 years and coming together again. And in about 2004, there were two scoliosis or early onset scoliosis study groups. So there were study groups focusing on patients with onset of scoliosis less than the age of 10 years. One was called the Growing Spine Study Group under the Growing Spine Foundation. And that group typically looked at traditional spinal growing rods, and that was industry sponsored. The other study group was called the Chest Wall and Spine Deformity Study Group, and that typically looked at rib-based fixation such as Vector. That was also industry funded. And those two groups worked harmoniously side by side for years and years. But in about 2014, 2015, we started having a lot of commonalities in terms of the patients that we're looking at. There was some overlap in terms of the patient populations and the devices that we were studying. And with the advent of MAGIC or magnetically controlled growing rods, both study groups were looking at that device and all of the different etiologies under early onset scoliosis. Because of that, we had a lot of combined studies between the two different study groups. And when industry was looking at how best to finance different study groups, they said, hey, you guys are studying the same patients, you're collaborating. We don't really want to divide our funds between two different groups. So that's when we started thinking, maybe we are better together, because early onset scoliosis is just a drop in the bucket of all spine patients, around the world. And it took several years for our groups to kind of negotiate, always in good faith and always very amicably to merge together. And there have been a couple of different name changes over the years, but it was not until 2021 and until we actually signed the documents to merge the two foundations. And that's where the creation of the Pediatric Spine Foundation came from. And I happened to be president at that time of one foundation, and Bruce Barnia was the president of the Growing Spine Foundation. And then through COVID, we were able to make this all happen. And here we are 2 years later, and it's very seamless. We're all one big happy family, and we're actually the largest pediatric spine registry in the world. There's 11,500 patients. We have almost 200 members, and we represent surgeons, clinicians from 13 countries, so truly international representation. So what started as a bit of fragmentation in the early onset scoliosis population and the study has come together to form one foundation to look at early onset scoliosis. And even beyond that, we study adolescent idiopathic scoliosis, neuromuscular scoliosis up to the age of 21, and even beyond, where we are looking at some of the adult outcomes in some of these pediatric patients. And we are also studying spondylolisthesis. We are also looking at back pain. And so we continue to evolve and spread our wings over time. One of the areas that have really improved our group with so many members. Each of these smaller groups started with 20 to 40 members, and we may touch on it in more detail later, but how to maintain that ability to have that small collegial think tank atmosphere with open dialogue and the ability to try to encourage and mentor younger surgeons. How does that scale to when you have almost 200 members? And that's been one of our challenges, and I think we're improving on that over time. And so as we move forward, we're going to continue to adhere to our mission, which is helping growing children with spine problems live longer and healthier lives. And I think I'd heard that from a previous speaker about how hip conditions aren't life-threatening. A lot of people would say the same of scoliosis. The exception is early onset scoliosis, and that if it is left untreated in these young children who have a lot of spine and chest wall and lung growth ahead of them, it can end up with early mortality for these patients. So it truly is a life-threatening condition, and we will continue to study it for as long as we're able to.
Thanks, Ron. And that's a great story, and I think it's one of showing the power of collaboration, power of stronger together. So it's thanks for all of your efforts in leading it. Can you comment a little bit about the meeting, the ICUOS meeting? How that's come
Yeah,
about, how it's
that's
evolved, where it's going?
right. So under the Pediatric Spine Foundation, there's 3 different arms. One is the research arm, which is the Pediatric Spine Study Group. One is the education arm, and that includes outreach to patient and family education. And also underneath education is the International Congress of Early Onset Scoliosis meeting. And then the third arm is on development and sustainability. So talking specifically about the ICIOS, International Congress of Early Onset Scoliosis meeting, that happens every fall. Noel Larson from Mayo will be the chair this year. And I think it's, 15th or 16th meeting now, annual meeting. And that was one of the things that the Growing Spine Foundation brought to the table. This was a meeting that they ran over time, and both study groups participated in it. And that's our flagship education meeting, in which anybody is welcome to come and attend. Beyond our membership, we have an annual meeting for our members the day before that conference. And we have surgeons, clinicians around the world invited, and every third year it's outside of North America. So for instance, last fall it was in Italy. This year and next year will be in the United States, and then we'll go abroad again. So we try to maintain a balance between having international representation and international members being able to travel and attend. It's generally a 2-day conference, didactic learning, as well as a lot of case-based sessions and now some breakout sessions. We continue to expand, and we're trying to involve more neurosurgeons in our group. Every year we will often bring in some multidisciplinary clinicians to talk about specific topics. We've had geneticists, pulmonologists, et cetera, join our meeting periodically to help give us a holistic look at these young children with spine issues.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Uni.
Thank you, Kishore, Emily, and Tamara. You're in the background somewhere. I want to add my apologies for not being in Nashville. I found out yesterday that I could get a flight early, and my parents are visiting from far away, and I only thought it was fair I ought to come back home. But I'm glad to join you online, so forgive me for not being there in person. So I'm a pediatric orthopedic surgeon based at Sick Kids, that's Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. A major focus of my clinical practice is focused on children with cerebral palsy and cerebral palsy-like conditions. And early in my career, I was interested in trying to answer the question of, are we making a difference to the lives of these children? Cerebral palsy is an umbrella term for a wide spectrum or it's not one condition, but it's a wide spectrum of disorders that have certain common features and a wide spectrum of severity. And at the very severe end of the spectrum are children who are reliant on wheelchairs for their mobility and on carers or parents for most of their activities of daily living. And these children are at particularly high risk for developing hip dysplasia or hip displacement, which can have a significant impact on their quality of life and on how easy or difficult it might be to care for these kids. And these kids are somewhat voiceless because many of them, not all, but many have cognitive impairments and have difficulty communicating. How then do we know whether we're actually making a difference to their lives? And part of trying to answer that question, needed us to think about, well, how we'd even know, how would we measure what's actually important to this population? And with my background in clinical epidemiology, which is also an area that I had trained in addition to pediatric orthopedics, I set about establishing my research program around developing outcome measures that would be more meaningful to measure better. And, you know, I learned very quickly that if we're interested in knowing what's better, we've got to ask the people for whom it's intended. And when you can't ask a child who's either too young or cognitively very impaired, the next best person is the person who's caring for them. So that started the journey developing our patient-reported outcome measures, and one of which was the CP Child, which was specifically for this population of most severely involved children. And that outcome measure, once it was validated, you know, people seem to relate to it because there simply wasn't another measure that could that served this particular population. So it got translated and got culturally adapted in different parts of the world, and have been validated there. So it now gives us an opportunity to answer this question, not just in English-speaking countries, but around the world. Once we had the outcome measure, we could now bring together researchers to say, okay, now that we know how to measure whether we're making a difference or not, let's think about how best to design the studies to actually answer the question for this particular population. And the researchers amongst us will know that, you know, research is, when it's done at that level, requires funding. And unlike the Ron story where, you know, the spine interventions are all associated with very expensive health technologies and implants, where industry has a significant vested interest in supporting research, which can then help them design better implants. And so in cerebral palsy, and I'd argue probably for hip dysplasia in general, it will be hard to get that kind of interest from industry sponsored things. So to sponsor research funding. So we have to go through the more conventional routes of peer-reviewed funding, starting with our respective specialty societies like the Pediatric Orthopedic Society of North America and the American Academy of Cerebral Palsy and Developmental Medicine, both organizations of which, you know, I was I'm fortunate to be a member, and who've got, you know, small grants that allow us to get things started. And that's where the journey started, and allowed us to bring together a group of pediatric orthopedic surgeons from around the world, taking advantage of when the POSNA meeting was in Toronto back in 2013. We had just submitted our first grant to the Canadian Institute of Health Research, and got good feedback. We were not successful, but it allowed people to come together, and I used that meeting then to reapply later that year in the fall, and we were successful on that second go around. This was a study that was funded by CIHR that not only agreed to fund sites in Canada, but also sites around the world, which is unusual and generous of them. But I had to make the case that, you know, the answer for it to be meaningful and generalizable required the involvement of people from more than just Canada. So you need the numbers, and then more importantly, generalize the information to other areas. You needed multiple institutions, etc. So the CP Hip Outcomes Project was the CHOP study. Unlike the network that I think Kishore and his group have established, which is amazing, and even the pediatric spine study group, the CHOP is really a project. It's a very focused. So I would hesitate to call it a network. It is a collaboration of clinicians from around the world with an interest in cerebral palsy, who've been brought together to answer a very specific set of questions within a research framework funded by this study. We were very fortunate that the initial aims of the project have been established in developing the infrastructure to generate evidence, to do an observational longitudinal study, and use that to reapply to CIHR 3 years ago to actually continue to follow that cohort that we had recruited initially with CHOP Project 1 all the way up until skeletal maturity. So that group of patients that now is over 900 can be followed all the way until they've completed growing, because the story doesn't end with our interventions when they're young at 6 or 7 or 8 years of age. Things change, and we need to be able to track their outcomes over length of time. So we are sort of in the toddler stage, where the first part of the project, which was to follow these patients in 2 years past recruiting them, and one of 5 different strategies to manage them, including a natural history group. We've reached that stage where we're now able to collate the data, clean it, and begin our first sets of analysis. So we're at the cusp of a very exciting time where those initial results will be able to fuel more questions, and then I think the real opportunity then is to excite the network and engaging them into allowing different groups within that collaboration to ask questions that they may be interested in. And we've taken a lesson from the efforts like IHDI, which became IHDR, again, due to the amazing efforts of Kishore and Emily and their group there. And so we're only, we've got a very focused question. It's very research focused. And I'm happy to share more about that, but that's our story.
Thanks, Oni. I don't know if we can get Al back up, because it's not intended that I was going to ask him a question, but I'm going to take this opportunity where he's the president of Indian Pediatric Orthopedic Society, POSI, Pediatric Orthopedic Society of India, and we've worked very closely on hip health. And Al, can you probably talk to us about what this network and POSI can do together?
Thanks, Kishore. Absolutely. So I come from India, where we see a lot of late presenting conditions, including DDH, late presenting Perthes, and so many other hip conditions. And till very recently, we did not have any screening guidelines for DDH or for hip surveillance in children with cerebral palsy. And over the last couple of years, working with 12 different national organizations in India, including the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, the Neonatology Forum, the radiology organizations, and various other national bodies. Thanks to a lot of support from I'm a Hippie, from the Hip Hope Network, and the University of British Columbia, led by Kishore and Emily, we actually established screening guidelines both for DDH and for CP hip surveillance. And I'm very happy to say that those guidelines are now being promoted all across the country. We have had several webinars to popularize these screening guidelines. We have built the guidelines keeping India's healthcare system in place. We understand that the guidelines available outside in so many other countries where screening has been popular for many, many years now are not always applicable to low middle income countries where the healthcare system is extremely different. And I'm proud to say that working with these national organizations with a lot of support globally from I'm a Hippie and IHDR, we have developed these guidelines and now in the phase of popularizing them across the country. We have had several meetings with the pediatricians and neonatologists. At every national meeting now, we're hoping to have a separate session dedicated to the screening of DDH and CP hip. And I think the first step itself was creating this awareness among the various professionals involved in children's hip health. We were surprised that when we began this initiative 2 years ago, several pediatricians and neonatologists refused to accept that DDH was a common condition in this country. There's so many other conditions that they are involved with, especially with infections, that musculoskeletal health in children really is not a priority for several pediatricians and neonatologists in our country. And we were so pleased that in the process of developing these guidelines, we liaised, of course, with the office bearers of these various organizations. And that has helped us to get the continuity on board with subsequent leaders in these organizations to make them understand that DDH and CP hip are important conditions that can result in severe morbidity if not detected in time. Having developed these guidelines with collaboration with the Hip Hop Network, we're now in the process of supporting other countries in our subcontinent, especially with Sri Lanka now. We're also in talks with Bangladesh and with Pakistan to see if we can help them develop guidelines similar to ours, because the healthcare system is quite similar in this part of the world. So as president of POSI over the next couple of years, my aim really is to take this forward, to work a lot on developing not only guidelines for several other such conditions around the hip, but also educational modules that we spoke about earlier, where we can build modules not only for orthopedic surgeons, but also for the primary health physicians, the pediatricians, neonatologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, and anyone involved in pediatric hip health. So really, thanks a lot to Kishore and the team, the entire Hip Hop Network, of which I'm proud to be a part of. And let's hope that many of you join us in this endeavor and help us achieve our goals. Thanks so much, Kishore.
Thank you, Al. Patricia, do you want to give a little perspective from Brazil in terms of, what does this mean for you? And I know we have a past president of Brazilian Pediatric Orthopedic Society with us. Thank you for joining us today. Patricia, are you online?
Hello, can you listen to me?
Yes.
Oh, nice to see you, Kishore, Emily, Tamara, Joe, and everyone. And I see there's somebody from Brazil there. I'm very glad about it. We just hope to work together and try to build the same path as Al, and with your support. So that's how we hope. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. And yeah, how are we doing for time? Okay, great. So with this, anybody else want to say anything about how you see us moving forward, or how you want to get involved? Or do you have any questions for people here or people that are online? Okay, so while you're thinking about that, for sure next year at EPOS will be a much bigger meeting than what we have. It'll be in person. Whether we'll do it a day before, a day after, we'll have to see how things pan out. But we'll get back to you within the next few months about that. Tamara? Yeah. Tamara is asking, how can we involve those that are outside of a discipline practice? Can you explain what that means? Yeah.
So my question was, how can we engage individuals in our various networks, and particularly in the Hip Hop Network, outside of our current discipline of practice? On the discussion panel, we have an excellent range of practitioners who are clinicians, who are advocates, who are surgeons, who are PTs, who have developed incredible networks in global hip health and spine health. How can we specifically try and engage folks who are outside of our specific discipline of practice, so it's becoming more of an interdisciplinary network that involves more than just the people that we know that are sitting next to us at our desk or in our conferences that we have that we see year after year?
I think a great example is we have the team from Gillette that's here. So the first question I asked, for their research team is if they connected with Bryn and Emily. And so I think we got to be thinking just beyond clinicians coming together. There's several other people that are involved in working. So I think that's people need to bring those ideas about, you know, all the different people that are working on hip health or that intersect with working with hip health, right? And so, Tamara, I don't have an answer, but I'm looking for people to help us with growing the network. Bryn? Pablo, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, and I do appreciate all of the efforts. And Kishore, thanks for giving me just a quick forum just to say hi to everyone and congratulate you on the efforts and the how far Hip Hope Network has come. I just did want to give a very quick update on IHDI as there has been some changes, and as Uni alluded to, IHDI, as you all probably know, was founded almost 16 years ago by the efforts of Chad Price and others, and then sort of did transfer and morph some of the original ideas of IHDI, which did become IHDR, which now has, of course, expanded and GHDR, and as a part of Hip Hope Network. IHDI does remain as a committed partner to Hip Hop Network, and we will continue to collaborate. In fact, Ben Shore and I, who have been working on the professional development pillar for Hip Hop Network, have been discussing how we can actually incorporate this. And I think this is key to the future. So just as a quick update, IHDI remains very committed to education and patient advocacy specifically, as well as networking, even though we clearly realize that clinical research and registry-based research is clearly being led and run by GHDR and your and Emily's tremendous efforts. So just as a brief update to everyone, and if anyone is interested in hearing more about how IHDI can collaborate, please do also feel free to reach out to me, as we do look forward to continued collaboration in both of these aspects.
Thank you, Pablo. Any other updates, discussions? You know, talking about volunteerism and getting involved beyond, I'd like to give a shout out. And there are some people that are quietly in the background that do an amazing amount of work. And I saw firsthand with Jennifer Lane, who's here. She's not in Dallas. She is at Gillette, Minnesota, but she does an incredible amount of volunteer efforts to get that group going. So we do need people that are giving their time for paying it forward, as we talked about. Same with Elric. We spend time helping India develop their care pathway. Now he's spending a lot of hours helping Sri Lanka develop their guidelines, and he's donating a lot of his time to help that. And you know, it's paid forward. We're not going to be transactional. We're not going to get from each other. That's not how we work. We work on working collaboratively, trying to improve hip health of children, wherever they are, whether they're in our local communities or others. Uni.
Sure, I have a question for you. You know, you're part of CHOP and you know it very well. How can that project, working under the aegis of the Hip Hop Network, expand to include sites beyond what we already have engaged in? Although we have sites around the world, you very well know and have pointed out there are lots of sites that are not part of it, and the reasons for which we have to start somewhere. And when you're doing a research project, you've got to be able to show all kinds of things initially to get the funding. But we're at a stage right now that infrastructure is in place, and we can build on that. So what ideas do you have? And secondly, how do you see groups like CHOP or others working collaboratively, either within or complementing the efforts that they're making, because ours is a very, very specific focus in a much larger context that your network represents.
So Winnie, I think knowledge translation. So that's what I was saying. Not everybody can participate in a group of people that are doing research. They don't have infrastructures, or they might not have the tools, but they want to learn. And the findings that say what CHOP comes up with is going to be relevant no matter where those children are. And if not, we need to make them relevant. So I think where this network and CHOP or IPSG and the network or anchor some of the established groups, and this can work with trying to engage people, patients, families. I mean, I'll give you a good example is with Al and his work. Again, going back to the work he's done in India, we know swaddling for DDH is a risk factor, and but people talk about it. No one's actually studied. And when he went back and looked at knowledge of people if swaddling is bad for the hips, it was less than, I think, 5% of the practitioners, whether they were midwives or nurses or pediatricians, that were aware, right? So what networks can do is really do knowledge translation from top down, that is through practitioners, clinicians, but also ground up, right? From patients and families coming and saying, hey, I heard swaddling is bad. And, so it's those kind of efforts, Winnie. I think what we can do is the knowledge that you're generating through this network, we can translate that, we can disseminate that, we can discuss more in depth about what else need to be done, and include people truly, if there are other people that are interested in joining your study 3.0. I know you're at a 2.0 right now, and that's an opportunity for us to be able to, through this network, advocate, talk about, and get people involved. So I'd say we're just getting started, but that's exactly the reason why you're here. Your efforts are focusing on a major, major problem for children's hips. And we have surveillance programs. And so we want to bring all of those that are working for hip health together, whether it's through the studies, whether it is, surveillance programs, screening programs, and others, to really bring their knowledge that they're generating to this forum and collaboratively then disseminate that knowledge to all around the world and learn from others. There are so many people right now in all of the studies that we have, whether it's GHDR or CHOP or IPSG, that are not represented, that are doing innovative treatments and innovative approaches. And so that's what we're doing, is trying to connect with people, enhance what we're doing, disseminate knowledge. Thank you. Can you tell me what those are? Sorry.
Can I just follow up with that, Kishore?
Yeah, please.
So I think you're absolutely right. I think that's certainly one way. But as you've rightly pointed out, there may be many members of the GHDR who also want to contribute to that knowledge generation. Even if they may not necessarily come from an environment that is conducive to or has had a track record of doing research. And I think there's an opportunity that you can provide and set the example for, and then groups like ours, you can make those connections so that those who want to contribute or be part of this is an opportunity for you to be that conduit, so that it's not just that they're receiving the knowledge that we've generated, but they're contributing to generating that new knowledge as well.
Thank you, Winnie.
Giovanni asks, as a global network, how do you plan to know the real world situation on hip health? There are different situations in every place and time. Knowledge opportunities are there as well. Early and late diagnosis and treatment cases, unexpected hip health evolution, or unexpected natural history. In other words, how do you plan to include everybody for a global network?
It's very simple. You need to write down, or you need to send us an email or a phone call. People will put, Tamara, if you can put my cell phone number in the chat box for people. So connect with us and give us your plans about what knowledge you have, or if you actually know someone that's not here that is a major contributor in any part of the world, and we want to know, we want to reach out, we want to include them. That's why if you saw our recognition of hip legends, they truly are not just practitioners. Nancy was here, we recognized her as a hip legend because she's done so much for raising awareness and for advocating for hip health. And if not for we, bringing to attention to the rest of the world, people wouldn't know all of her efforts. If she's only doing through her own network, we will not learn about all the things that Nancy is working on. And it's only because somebody else pointed us to Nancy and we're connected with the same way. I'm sure there are people that you know. And if you know, doesn't matter which part of the world they come from. We want to hear from them, we want to learn from them, and we want to include them.
Comment from Al. Collaboration is a way forward. Do you volunteer to serve on various action committees and subcommittees of HHN? This will help us understand various barriers in healthcare in many parts of the world and develop strategies, develop pathways and knowledge translation tools for awareness. Comments?
Yeah, no, Al, I could not agree more. And so please do get involved, reach out. And, we want to, take on your expertise and your knowledge and your efforts. And we're stronger together. And that's what we want to do, is to really learn from you. This is certainly not a network that just focused on North America. This is truly a global network. So we want to hear from you. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, do reach out. Okay, with that, Joel, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you all for joining, and this recording will be shared with you. And do send it to your teams and other collaborators. And we're all busy. If ever we have a call, it's virtual, you're not able to join, that's totally fine, but keep following what we're doing, get involved. So we don't expect you to make every single meeting, but we expect you to be engaged with us, because I think it's important that your contributions are valued and your contributions are shared with everybody around the world, because several of you are thought leaders in this field, and we want to use your expertise to improve hip health around the world. Thank you. Yeah.
Jackie asks, as a third year DPT student who wants to be part of this network and help those who are suffering from these hip disorders, what types of opportunities are there out there for PTs? Is there any way to let PTs have residencies with some of these amazing hospitals or people in the hip world?
Great question. So, I think we have a physiotherapist that leads our hip surgeons program, Stacy Miller, who's engaged with us. Maybe she, Nancy, and you, and I know Holly from UK, who's engaged with us, so can come together and give a roadmap to how you think physios can work together. And we can certainly support that. I mean, I can tell you, at least I can speak for my institution, that if anybody wants to come for a visit, or they want to see what we do, or you want to invite us to come to where you are to learn from you, we're very happy to do that. And we will find resources to be able to manage that. To give you an example, Patricia is coming from Brazil to spend 2 weeks with us in Vancouver in July. So we welcome anyone that want to come, but at the same time, we will come to you to learn from you. If you're doing something different and you say, hey, do you want to come and see what we do? We'd love to come and visit. And we want to create those opportunities on this network. Those that are either looking to go somewhere, those that want to invite other people. we'll create a platform on this network so that you're connecting with each other. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we have annually, thanks to Regina and I'm a Hippie Foundation, the chair of the Hippie Foundation, the inaugural chair, passed away this year. His name is Russell Smith. And Russell is a true legend in really helping I'm a Hippie come together. So I'm a Hippie instituted a Russell Smith grant for people that want to travel. And that doesn't necessarily have to be that they're coming to Vancouver. If somebody reaches out and says, hey, I'm a hip health expert, this is what I want to do. I want to travel somewhere to gain expertise. I want to see this person, and we want to be able to support that. So look out for that annual grant that will come out sometime in January next year again. So this year, Patricia is coming as the recipient of that, Russell Smith grant. Regina, do you want to say anything about the grant or your efforts in helping improve hip health, and this exact question that got asked about how do we support people?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that grant, actually. We created it, as Kishore said, to give these types of opportunities, well, particularly to hip practitioners from low resource areas. So, it's perfect as an example for Jackie, for example, because you don't have to be, a surgeon or a doctor. You can be from any field in hip health. And the idea really is to give them the opportunity to learn, well, primarily from this amazing team of Kishore and Emily at BC Children's, to come and learn, and not just learn but also exchange knowledge. As Kishore said, we all learn from everybody, and that's what we always say. It's about collaboration. It's not just giving knowledge, but trying to also learn from each other. So the Russell Smith Grant is something that we're really proud of. We've launched it this year, and I'm sure you'll hear more about it. Patricia is the first recipient, and it's something that we're looking forward to really rolling out in a bigger way.
Yeah, the other thing that I'm a Hippie and also Pearson family that's based in Vancouver are supporting a hip health grant. Look out for that. This fall, we will actually give out 3 grants of $10,000 to anyone that's working on any project that's going to improve hip health of children. It doesn't matter which condition, what we will come up with some guidance as to what you can apply for. But again, that truly will be a global hip health grant. It doesn't matter where you practice, what you do, but whatever you're doing, if we think that that's going to add knowledge for improving hip health, and we'll support that through that grant. Okay, Joel? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Kishore, and thanks everybody. Everybody can hear. This is such a great exchange. Really thankful for everybody who could join in for that discussion, and I'll carry on. So, essentially, there's lots of opportunities to participate. The network is growing, and essentially, we're aiming to build these connection points. Many different ways to do it. So now there's the new Become a Mentor Mentee. If you're interested in either of those or both, there's ways to do that are available on the website. Essentially, it's express your interest and a little bit of profile, and will help identify where there could be good matches and connections, and then it's up to people to create those relationships and continue them directly. Join an action committee. You heard about those, so we're growing the different areas as we're trying to really actively build out according to all the vision and aspirations we have for the platforms and connections and content and events you heard of today, and any new ideas. So bring those energy and ideas to any of those groups. We really appreciate it. Hip Health Day coming up again about a month from now on June 4th. We'll be not only setting up for our hip legends So please nominate a hip legend, and we'll be doing that again, but also connecting different research groups, advocacy groups, and other things to help promote the awareness and advocacy of hip health around the world. So we aim to, make sure to take advantage in multiple ways. So watch for things about that. Will be, where we can do it on social media, other ways. We look to amplify the exposure that we can, and even more. So participate in the Rare Hip Conditions Registry that was mentioned earlier. If there's other ideas for how we can build out content. And again, there's that platform for exchange on clinical discussion that you can join that's moderated from members of the Hip Hope Network on Doc Matter. And if you haven't already, be sure to fill out the membership form. It's just, it's free, stay connected, and we'll make sure to identify any opportunities for further activity and engagement in the group. So thanks. There's lots of ways, and if there's other ideas, they're welcome. And so one last thing about, we've had this meeting today, and it's thanks for everybody who's participated and helped make it a success. Looking for ideas for other ways to stay connected. We've got ideas for next year, and potentially some different ways to connect as a part of other events that happen. But if you have other ideas, there's a last poll here on Slido, again, HHN. So, and it's share your ideas for Hip Hop Network. It looks like, is it connected with the other one? We've got some answers already on. Oh, okay. So I think, well, I'm seeing it here on Zoom. So the question is, share your ideas for Hip Hop Network meetings, and there's some people typing in. Of course, we're open to that kind of input anytime. And then otherwise, let's see if some of those start to come up. Include case discussions. Oh, another key person who could provide expert perspective. Ben Joseph was raised. Anyway, I see there's still some typing. I'll hang on for a second. Teaching principles. Lots of ways that we aim to stay connected and grow the reach. So appreciate all the folks who could participate here in our second plenary session here in Nashville that are live in the room, and then also who joined online. I think the last things that we had for setting up photos, so maybe we can go ahead and do that, and then we'll thank everybody and conclude the meeting. Yeah, I can share screen here. Sorry, so I heard one other question. Any specific training for nurses? I guess that means like in terms of educational opportunities that are going to come through the network, and we hope to. So our scope is to include that kind of support and material, and there will, I'm sure, be other engagement opportunities and educational kind of events and whatnot for the full allied health spectrum. Emily. Great. Great point. Thanks, Emily. So I'll repeat what she was saying, which is that, we're looking for input on any of these things too. So if you're interested, or if you know people who could be interested to help us organize our development for these kinds of programs, then that would be great. We're looking for input in terms of what would be priority, most meaningful material and ways to deliver it. So thank you. And here's a plug for different ways that you can stay in touch. We've got very active media channels and more material growing on the hiphopnetwork.org website. So please connect with us, or, tag us when there's things that could be helpful for the network to share out, and we will aim to do that. And otherwise, thanks to our founding donors, the Peterson Group and I'm a Hippie, who've really helped provide, the key funding to start this momentum and get it going and off the ground. And so that is critical for us, but as well as, this is a volunteer network. So it's really helping people help people. So all of you, are important in the appreciation as well. So thanks to our founding donors. And lastly, unless Kishore had any other comments, we'll get organized for some capturing posterity.
The only comment I'd make is Joel, Mara, and Emily and Bryn. Thank you for all of your hard work, especially Tamara. You've done the bulk of the work to get this meeting organized. Thank you so much. Ryan is online. Ryan, thank you. I know. Thank you. Okay, a picture time for people online.
So anyone who's online, we'll set it up in gallery view and try and capture a few quick snaps. And so if you can turn on your camera and put on your smile for a second, we'll capture that. Thanks again for everybody who joined online. And we should also get organized here in the room. So maybe while we're doing that, there's a good spot up here where we can organize for a nice group photo too. So maybe we can get these both organized at the same time. Thanks again. Looks like people are turning their cameras on. So 3, 2, 1 for online. Get a big smile. Some screen captures. Thank you very much. 3, 2, 1 again. Nice. Okay, thanks so much. Okay, thanks so much. I will conclude the online session. We'll hang around here and continue to have our refreshments and engagement here. Really appreciate it. It's another successful meeting. Thank you again. Bye now.